Good morning, boys and girls. Once again, we're on audio only today. Please bear with us. Any questions? What have you learned?
Yeah, so last time we had chatted, we talked about surrendering to God, and then you talked about surrendering to or aligning with the way as a different way to think about it. And
different way to think about it or not.
Right. And so I wanted to talk more about that because I feel like for me at least there was some more clarification, or there's more depth to go into it there.
Well, you have a Christian background, correct?
Slightly. I went to Catholic school.
Yeah, I'd say that's okay. We'll call them Christians. Yeah, all right. So that's a Christian background. And so we have a kind of especially if it was implanted in you as a child, there's at least a vague representation of God as a somewhat anthropomorphized, if nothing else.
As a being?
Yeah, as a being. Very good.
Right.
And if nothing else, Jesus himself is God incarnate. And so those imprints are probably going to still be there. Whether
right.
you know, so that makes for the word God. Now, if you had not been so imprinted, or if you had developed through a lifetime experiences with say bad Catholics that did bad things to you as a child, then you may or may not want to work with that imprint. But if you don't have it at all, right? The way is a more universal manner of describing the same thing. And if you tend to be Buddhist, right, you think of the Buddha, or the Buddha nature, or the Buddha essence. And these are just different. The human brain is so small and so limited that these kinds of symbols or representations are necessary for most people until a certain point. And I'm not sure how much maybe we should go into it. That there were great Sufi saints who wouldn't opine on whether there was a God or not. Or they would say, yes, I believe in God, but no, but not always. And I think what they were trying to point to was that the Islamic or the Christian or the Judaic representation of God is woefully inadequate to encompass the reality. And the same thing's true with, of course, for Buddhists and Hindus and even Taoists would say the same thing. I mean, if you encapsulate it in a thought, or you can give it any attributes, then you've limited it. And hence we have this tradition of the 100 names of God, or the name that can't be said, or can't be spoken, or something like that. So it all depends on where you are in your journey and what's most comfortable at each stage of that journey. But then, of course, you get to where no representation, no attributions, no attributes, and certainly no words will convey that which you're referring to.
Right.
And when that comes up, then that's just the way it is, and you just remain silent. That's in the Tao Te Ching, the famous passage. Those who know do not say. Those who say do not know. Well, one of the meanings of that passage is that those that know do not say because they cannot say. And so I don't know if that answers your question. Does it?
Kind of. That makes sense. when I've been
Why
thinking,
don't you repeat the question and see? Let me give it another try.
well, I guess I can clarify more. So I've been thinking about it in the context of like surrendering.
Oh, okay. Well, then, one thing to surrender is the notion that you're able to understand all that God is, and you want to just align yourself as much as possible with that truth. And so there shouldn't be an obstacle, in any of those traditions for surrender. Any tradition, any legitimate tradition, to surrendering to the will of God.
Mm.
There's another way of putting it that's very popular and good. It's let go and let God. But I suspect you want to go further than that and make sure you're aligning in every way you can.
Right.
Not just abrogating responsibility, but working with the actuality of what is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the Tao comes to mind with like the non-contriving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
The contriving, yes, that would be part of it, but contriving is also a richer word. Okay, at the last two lines of the Tao Te Ching are, the way of heaven is to help and not harm. Let me just slow down. The way of heaven is to help and not harm. The way for humans is to act without contention. Now, contention carries a lot of I should have said baggage there, or a lot of work there, because it refers to any kind of contention, especially in the mind, but also in other ways. And so then as you begin to realize that there's nothing but God, for example, right, then you begin to see that you can learn and you can see God in everywhere, in everything. And then as your mind opens and you're able to attune, you realize that, wait a minute, I'm walking around in the, what they call the body of Christ, or in God. But see, that even for me, that word God, it has a taste in my when I say it there's something wrong with it. But that has to do with my upbringing and my and it's very clear why people don't want to use that word after a point.
Right.
And just like you can't really say the way, in some translations of the Tao Te Ching, they say the way that can be spoken is not the eternal way, or something like that.
Yeah.
That's also paying homage, is understanding that you literally can't talk about it. Even to say it is wrong. But let me say this: it's all there is. And so, if you're trying to accord with the will of God, or the will of truth, or the will of the way, or the will of Allah, or the will of the Atman, or whatever it may be, you're pointed to the same thing, regardless of the tradition. And to accord with that is a much broader construct than, say, going out and proselytizing, or just focusing on Bible verses, or verses in the Avatamsaka, or verses in the Quran. And you must go way beyond words into the realm of reality itself. And there is where the gateway of marvels is to be found. And in those marvels, for example, just contemplate the number of galaxies. How many galaxies are there in the universe?
A lot.
About 150 billion. And each of those galaxies has, thousands or millions of stars. So we're talking about trillions and trillions of stars. And we're also talking about a universe with no end, so we really don't know, right? It just keeps going according to the latest formulations. But if you just consider 150 galaxies aren't small, right?
Yeah.
We're in the Milky Way galaxy. Let's just go along with their estimates at the moment and say 150 billion of those, and thousands, an unspeakable number of stars. Now what? I mean, what does that even say? What does that mean? What's the circumstance? Or what's the condition? I mean, what is that even?
And that's just of what we can see.
And that's just a simple exercise, a simple contemplation that begins. Because the universe is supposedly expanding faster than the speed of light, so most of the universe we'll never see. But the point is just in that simple little contemplation, that's enough to blow the top of your head off if you really, really think about it.
Yeah.
Then you return back to your little cranium, right? Your little skull, and as you go about your day, it's just somewhat different. Now, I'm not saying that is according with the will of anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that's an example of how a simple contemplation can inform and does inform. Now, when you walk around in your daily life, there's all kinds of miraculous things. As a matter of fact, there's not a thing that's not miraculous. But then you for example, contemplate, well, what is a bird really? I mean, really, did you know enough science to know that, it's not feathers and it's not a beak and feet? It's something else there. And so that's one aspect of it, sincere contemplation. Another aspect of it is the humility. And this is the part that's probably the most important and the most difficult, especially for Westerners, is to have the humility to say, listen, I don't know, I don't understand. I'm too limited. I can't, and so I'm going to rely on something that I can't even speak. I can't even speak the name. And the humility to realize how little we know. We know nothing, really.
Right.
And to not go around with, this attitude, well, I'm going to run the world. I'm going to run myself. I'm going to decide what happens. And we don't decide. You didn't even decide when you were born. You can't decide when you're going to die.
Mm-hmm. And
everything in between, if you think you're in control of it, well, you're not at the level at which most people are currently thinking of themselves. They're not in control of this. And so the humility to acknowledge that and to learn from it and to realize, like I say many times, the universe is trying to bring you home. And to be alert and pay attention closely enough to see what's actually happening opposed to what you think must be happening according to whatever little toy model you have in your head. That would be the other aspect of submission is humility, sincerity, humility, and dedicated effort in contemplation or prayer or meditation or whatever you want to call it. All of those are essential elements, and it keeps going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are just three facets that I can, provide at the moment.
That makes sense.
Those three will take you a long way. So sincerity, humility, and opening your mind and your effort in contemplation, meditation, and prayer.
That makes sense. So, what about for on a less deep level, I guess, like when just dealing with things of everyday life and like the Sufis say, in this world, but not of it. And last time we talked, you talked about how David Hawkins would, I think it was that one, you talked about how his approach of like
he was really Episcopalian. I mean, the guy was really Episcopalian. Maybe he didn't realize it for a lot of his life, but
What does that mean?
A Christian.
Oh. But you were saying something like how that, and maybe it was Hawkins, maybe it was the Buddhists, but how they kind of just accept things as they are, and they like don't do anything about it. But the Sufis,
try and get away from what is. See, this accepting things as they are, which is a deep Taoist teaching.
mm-hmm.
But if you really think about it, you'll try and get away from what is. No matter where you turn, no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter how you do it, whatever, you're always confronted with what is.
Yeah.
Now, your mind, on the other hand, can play games and say, well, it is, but it should be this, or it shouldn't be that.
Right. But
and that is antithetical. I mean, now I'm talking at a deep level. That we can't, I'm presuming you know right from wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm presuming that you have interiorized the paramitas or the Buddhist virtues or the Christian virtues or the Jewish or, presuming that, then we get into these other deeper questions.
Right. But last time we had talked, you talked about the Sufis, and you had seemed to say that they were more equipped with handling things of the world on a, like,
because good point, because they make allowances for growing up as well as waking up. Now the Taoists, they give you some beautiful rules of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so do the Buddhists, but I don't think I'd want a Buddhist running my hedge fund, right? Necessarily. I wouldn't want, and depending on the kind of Christian, I mean, that might be a good administrator. But so in the world, there's different rules. I mean, the thing goes, it goes all the way up and all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And so to find that spot where you're functioning well in whatever you're doing, that's part of the gig. And the reason the Sufis came up is that Idris Shah put together a program of helping people understand the tricks that their mind play and helping them undo some of those tricks of self-deception and self-aggrandizement and so on and so on, just flat out foolishness that people get mixed up in. And that's the only reason I mentioned that. Now, in other traditions, that might be done. It might be done or won't be done or might not be done by the family and the ambient community or whatever. I mean, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, something to raise the kid. You see what I'm saying?
Maybe.
Well, if you play on a team sport, you learn that you're not necessarily the center of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn to give and you learn to take.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn that you're not to be the center. You don't have to be the center of attention all the time. And you learn to keep your mouth shut while the coach is teaching or whatever.
Right.
Well, those are valuable skills.
Right.
Now, as far as I know, the Sufis don't have team sports.
Right.
And so they use something else. And now I would say the same of Buddhism, but most of Buddhism that we know here in the West is designed for monks, right?
Right.
And for monasteries, and not entirely, but that's historically been a central focus, at least in their literature. And with Christianity, you hopefully you have a school that's in a Christian culture, and so you learn right from wrong, and you learn how to get along, and you learn practical things about saving and balancing the checkbook, and those things are very important.
Right. So the reason
they get mixed all the time.
The reason I bring it up is because I noticed there's like a part of my mind that it is looking out for things to that are like wrong and that needs to be fixed, well,
there's plenty of those.
Right. And there's like part of me that's very bothered by these things and feels the need to do something about it or fix them, or and so I guess I'm trying to figure out if there is, and what the right balance is on spending energy on that sort of thing, because when I think about it, it feels like that's going to be a never-ending endeavor. Because
it is a never-ending endeavor.
I can feel it
as soon
as like an issue's resolved. When I can notice it on different types of issues, and sometimes it's easy to dismiss issues as like, something petty or not that big a deal. But then some other times I can rationalize that they are important. But I can also notice as soon as the issue is resolved, that part of the mind is just waiting to feed off something else, and is like actively looking for something else to be inflamed about. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But yes, and when you find a problem that you want to work on, make better or whatever, to correct or something like that, there's a great temptation to try and do something.
Right.
But before one does that, one needs incredible probity and incredible judgment and intelligence, or you just go and make everything worse.
Right.
And I know that from personal experience that you think you're doing good, and you think you're doing the will of God as you were taught it in Sunday school or something like that, or you saw it on the news, and then you go in and you just make things worse.
Right.
And we see a lot of that. And so wisdom is a paramita, and that kind of wisdom applied to the self is very hard to come by.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually takes a lifetime of experience, and some of it painful. I worked for a long time, years, on First Five, so getting funding to preschool kids from the ghetto, from these very high-risk neighborhoods in California, only to have the money stolen at the very, very end by the people who deceived and did wrong things. They stole the money and gave it to their constituents. They gave a little bit of money to the poor kids, but that wasn't the intent. The intent was to give it all to kids who needed it, not kids from wealthy families in California. But I was foolish, and I couldn't see clearly. And so you learn.
So what, in this case, what would you have done differently now that you do see clearly?
I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have supported them. I would have said no. I could see that you're not trustworthy, and that your interests are not aligned with the disenfranchised or the poor kids, and that you're going to steal from them. Which they look at the state of our society. You can see on one side of San Jose, the schools might as well be colleges. Beautiful auditoriums, beautiful football fields, beautiful grounds, and plenty of everything they need. You go to the other side of San Jose, and they don't have enough chalk or erasers for the Now, how does that come about? Well, the systemic wrongdoing, as far as I'm concerned, and so I should have known.
But then, what do you do with that drive?
Well, you say I'm not going to contribute to this cause. I'm not going to endorse it, support it, and work with it until we have some guarantees that you won't do it again. You see what I'm saying? Now, that's a bitter lesson to learn, and I should have known better. But I didn't, and so there you have it. People imagine that the devil, is got these horns and a tail, that he looks ugly and all that. No. The devil oftentimes wears a suit and is a member of a nonprofit, right, or a political party.
Right. I just I was discussing that with a friend, and he was trying to tell me that giving away money is a de facto good.
Well, see, there you go. So you have childish charity where you really don't care, You just want to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And those people invariably seem to want other people to know that they've given charity.
Mm-hmm.
And you have people who actually go and say work at the moment I'm thinking of parts of the Amazon where there was some Doctors Without Borders or Red Cross or people that were actually there actually doing something, as opposed to, again, I don't want to sound too bitter, but I've seen it so much, aggrandizing themselves by saying, well, look at me, I'm so good because I'm a philanthropist, and not looking beyond that to see whether they've done good or ill.
Mm-hmm.
And so philanthropy without wisdom, no thank you. It tends to make things worse.
Right. And so if I talk about, like, practically, in my case, if I feel this drive to do something, to fix a problem or something, and I think I could do something about it, but I don't know, like well,
consult with people. And also be open. Okay, so you have this drive. Good. You're a human being, working on being a real human being, a full human being. Don't worry. It will present itself. So you're talking about submitting to the will of the way or God or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It will be presented to you. Don't worry about that. You just have to have an open mind. And then if you have questions, by all means, seek consultation.
Mm.
I mean, consultation is key.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And what to do about frustration?
Understand what's being frustrated. Really. I mean, frustration is a beautiful teacher, because you know that there's some drive, some impulse, some desire, some want, some belief, something like that you don't know enough about. And so, again, that's a beautiful Buddha teaching, if frustration, because then well, there's something. If here's all this smoke, well, where's the fire?
Right.
And then you can deal with the fire, not with the smoke. If it applies, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. So is it safe to say that frustration is something that's resolved on the frustration itself? Can you resolve that at a personal level?
It depends on what kind of frustration it is.
And then still have, or if there's frustration about, wanting to fix something that you see as a problem.
That's not frustration, that's impatience.
Can you say more?
Well, the world is full of problems that need to be addressed.
Right.
I mean, you can't walk a mile without seeing, problems that are begging to be addressed, at least not in most of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are Disneyfied parts of the world where all those things are well hidden. But speaking of 99% of the world.
Right.
And so that's not the issue. I mean, it depends on the frustration. The reason I'm not asking you for details at this moment is because frustration will tend to move from one thing to another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in each case, if you understand deep down inside where it comes from, you'll find that you're
Oh. Sorry about that. I have a timer on the X app, and
oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So you don't stay on it too long.
Exactly. So it cut me off.
Crazy. That's crazy. No, I guess that's one way to do it. Yeah. So frustration is just like a flag saying, "Hey, look, what's underneath me."
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned
and oftentimes what you can do is, the word frustration is easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
Try and explore what other words might apply.
Okay.
Because you can't. I don't think can you have frustration without desire.
I mean, at first glance, it would seem no, but I'd have to think about it more.
All right, think about it some more. Good. The listeners are going to think that we've gone blank, so I'm just going to say, no, we haven't gone blank. We're just waiting.
So when I think of frustration, I think of like this physical feeling of kind of like constrictedness. And so I think that feeling, you can have that without desire, but I think when we talk about frustration, it's like that feeling, it's that feeling as a result of desire being blocked.
Well, sexual frustration certainly might be.
Right. And I think even like if I don't exercise enough, I get that feeling a bit. And it's like it overlaps with restlessness, and I don't think having to exercise is
good. And then there's mental frustration and personal frustration and things like that, but
Yeah. If there's like a dripping faucet, that might be a sort of frustration.
There you go. That's good. Now that one seems pretty straightforward if you know how to fix a dripping faucet, right?
Yeah.
It's more difficult when you're trying to find peace in, the Congo or, something like that.
Yeah.
You're frustrated by all the murders or whatever. I'm just saying Congo off the top of my head. I'm not picking it out. There's far worse places, I think.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned impatience, and that one struck with me because, I mean, it feels related to this, but also just
or just dissatisfaction with the world.
Right. But what to do?
But who told you the world was going to be satisfied? What is that beautiful quote from Hadrat Ali? Why do you revile the world when it is... Okay, no, let's see. Are you reviling it? Or is it... oh, gosh, can you pull that out? Let's see. Are you...
1 sec.
Oh, you who reviles the world. He's speaking to someone, I think they're on walking past some kind of horrible carnage, or, we could use your imagination. And he says to a friend, oh, you who revile the world, are you accusing it, or is it accusing you? And then he goes on to something about the world has announced its departure. So what's going on with you that you're treating it as if it won't, right? And then he talks about how much his wailing and this and fighting and all this other stuff, helped his parents on their deathbeds. It's a beautiful, beautiful passage out of Hadrat Ali, and it's in the book called Living and Dying with Grace, a short little masterpiece. Selections by Thomas Clary. Hard to recommend it enough, but it's a little bit, it's a little bit removed for most American readers, but with some effort, it's really great stuff. Did you find it?
No, I couldn't find it.
Yeah, Hadrat Ali, son-in-law of the Prophet, and I think that was the third Imam or something. I'm not up on my caliphates. Okay, what else is on your mind in the time we've got left?
I either want to ask more about impatience or could read a bit of the Avatamsaka.
Okay, with regard to impatience, which is, remember, patience is one of the 6 paramitas, okay? Use the other 5 to get you where you want to go. With things like patience, it's much simpler because, you can just work on the other 5 paramitas with that as the central focus, and you will get somewhere, all right?
Okay, that makes sense.
So rather than bore people by repeating those 6, which are all over the talks, I think, and you can also look them up on AI or something. I hope they do it well.
I think they do. I did it a while ago, and it was
all right, because other things they do not do well.
Yeah,
the internet is just too contaminated with bogus stuff. Okay, well, how about a little Avatamsaka?
Yeah,
that's always sweet. Unless you're sitting down with it for the first time and you're contemplating having to read that thing.
Well, one thing I noticed with the Avatamsaka, I was away for a week on vacation and didn't have the book. But there's like momentum that.
Yes, absolutely.
You gain with when you do it. And it's really difficult to start again when you stopped. But once you start doing it, it's pretty easy.
Until you've gotten far enough into the whole world, and then it's just you just love to be reminded of it. Just love to. There's some things you need to be older to know. See, once it's in your bones, then it's like coming home a little bit. Not always, but sometimes.
Okay.
They're always talking about good stuff, I can tell you that. Okay.
I'm on book 21, 10 practices.
Okay.
Should I read?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Then the enlightening beings, forest of virtues, imbued with the Buddha's power, entered into absorption in the skillful meditation of enlightening beings. When he had entered this absorption, there appeared before him Buddhas from beyond as many lands as atoms in 10,000 Buddha lands from each direction, and all were named Forest of Virtues. They said to the enlightening beings, Forest of Virtues, "Very good it is, O child of Buddha, that you are able to enter this concentration in skillful meditation. Good man, it is the collective empowerment of the Buddha of the same name, as many as atoms in 10,000 Buddha lands from each of the 10 directions, and also the power of past vows and the spiritual force of Vairocana Buddha, as well as the power of the virtues of the enlightened beings, that enables you to enter this concentration and expound the teaching for the sake of increasing in enlightened knowledge, deep entry into the realm of reality, comprehension of the realms of sentient beings, non-obstruction in what is entered into, non-hindrance in the realm of activity, attainment of infinite skill and means, embracing of the essence of all knowledge, conscious realization of all truths, knowledge of all faculties, and ability to uphold and explain all the teachings. In other words, it is for initiating 10 kinds of practice of enlightening beings. Good man, you should receive the spiritual power of the Buddhas to expound this teaching." Then the Buddhas...
Okay, so good. Now, let's go to the top and see what are they saying here. Because this is identical to Jesus, when Jesus says, "What you do to the least of these, you've done to me," right? And this is the self as other, of the Buddhist and Christian and Islamic traditions, if you go deep enough, and understanding that there is no other. So read the first few lines of that, what you just read. Read it again.
Sure. Then the enlightening being, Forest of Virtues, imbued with the Buddha's power, entered into absorption in the skillful meditation of enlightening beings. When he had entered this absorption, there appeared before him Buddhas from beyond as many lands as atoms in 10,000 Buddha lands from each direction, and all.
So what appeared to him were Buddhas, stretching out in all directions, all of the 10 directions, and they're all named for virtue, just like him. Right? Okay, so keep going.
They said to the enlightening being a forest of virtues, "Very good it is, O child of Buddha, that you are able to enter this concentration and skillful meditation. Good man, it is the collective empowerment of the Buddhas of the same name, as many as atoms in 10,000 Buddha lands, from each of the 10 directions, and also the power of the past vows and the spiritual force of Vairocana Buddha. As well.
So excuse me for interrupting, but here what they're saying is like all these people, all these Buddhas, everybody, everything, as many as grains of sand in the Ganges, right? There are all these Buddhas there to support you and help you. They even have your name. You have their name, right? We're all one thing. And so later when you start when it starts to trigger deeper understandings, what happens in this book is it acts as both a blessing and a reminder, right? And so believe it or not, everybody that's ever lived is you, right? Everybody who will ever live is you. Everybody who's living now is you, and all of the cosmos is you, right? And treated accordingly. And so this concentration is very, very powerful later, and so I know it's drudgery at first, but mark my words, later in life you'll just see that they're just like little jewels of practice, right? This is 10 practices,
right? The
book you're in. And so good, thank you for reading that passage. Do you have any questions about it or comments or anything like that?
I don't know if I have anything to add.
Now the way they do it is very unique, right? It's not something we're used to, because they go right to the end and all the way through. The book is holographic and fractal, and so every piece contains every other piece, and they're not shy, right? I mean, they're going to tell you that the proofs at a very, very high levels are embedded in here, and that prepares your mind also. Right. Now the genius of someone like Jesus is he just like puts it in a parable and he just says, what you do to the least of these, you done to me, right? Very memorable and very straightforward. But to really contemplate that, what does Jesus mean by that? What you do unto others, you do unto me. What actually does that mean? And then what does it mean to be in a world, in a galaxy? I mean, just moving a little bit to the left. What does it mean to be in a world, in a galaxy where there's 150 billion galaxies, each of which has innumerable stars, and those stars have planets just like ours? What does that mean to be here in this? Do you see what I'm saying? These are contemplations, and it's like beads of mercury. It's difficult at first, and it seems awkward. So you just do it. You just do it by rote at the beginning.
Yeah.
But then gradually it starts to gel, and then it's like the little beads of mercury. Pretty soon they all just like come toward each other, like in the Terminator, when they, those beads of mercury come together and form the Terminator.
I don't remember that, but I see what you're saying.
You haven't seen Terminator 2?
I think I've only seen the first one.
Oh my gosh! What? Oh my God! Oh no! You have to see Terminator 2.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very hard to destroy these things because they're quite determined. Yeah, you got to see Terminator 2, my friend.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
We'll talk more maybe about that next time or something like that. Anything else before we stop?
I don't think so.
Okay. Cool. Hasta luego. We'll go see Terminator 2, man.
Okay.
All right, ciao.
Thanks. Bye.